Great. So now we start recording. So hi everyone. As I said, I'm alone today, so we will study today both a Midrash Agadah, hopefully that we can dive into, but also we will learn some history lesson. So I hope you will all manage with some history. If it's too boring, I can understand. As you know, we just read Megillat Esther. In Megillat Esther, when Achashverosh couldn't fall to sleep, so he invited the history teacher to read from the history books to make him sleep. So I hope you won't fall asleep. I do think that there's quite a lot to see and learn from this. And the topic for today is connected to the time of the year. Which time of the year we are at in the Jewish calendar?
Counting the Omer?
Right, something that is connected to the celebration of the Omer, and specifically for tomorrow night that we will celebrate the Lag BaOmer. You all probably have been reciting how many days of the Omer every day since the second Seder. And if any of you missed that calculation, last night we counted 31 days. So it's 2 days more until Lag BaOmer. Lag stands for 33. Lamed is 30 and Gimel is 3, so 33. But we're not allowed to say how much we will count tonight, because this is not allowed to say until you come to the time to say it with the bracha. So I'm not saying how much we will count tonight. I can say how much we counted yesterday, which was 31. And saying all of that was connected, open to that we are going to celebrate Lag BaOmer tomorrow night. And I want to ask you, why? Why should we say, what is Lag BaOmer? What are we celebrating? What is it? What do you know?
It's in connection about Simon Bar Yochai.
Okay, so one option is connected to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai.
Yeah.
Somewhere. How is it connected to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai? Do you know?
I don't remember a lot. Some.
Yes. Okay. Anyone else? Something. Yes, Baba.
He died.
Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. He died.
Yeah.
All rabbis died at some point. Even I will die at one point, I heard. But yes, this is connected to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. But any other reason that you're here? Like, what do you know of Lag BaOmer?
Simon Bar Yochai was a great rabbi. He haven't Talmidim, and well, I don't know. I cannot explain, but I know the history about a little bit. Somebody maybe can help me.
What? So what did you know about the history?
Well, he was a rabbi who teach another students about the Torah. He haven't a lot of students. I don't remember how many, but yeah, I know, but I cannot explain a lot.
Maybe like 24,000 something, a lot.
Yes. Great. What you now show is why the need of this history lesson, because you're mixing two different stories. You're mixing two different stories. Who had 24,000
Rabbi Akiva.
disciples? Rabbi Akiva, right. And so you're mixing two stories. And the reason you're mixing, I'm actually not pointing finger. The reason you're mixing stories, it's because all these stories are in some way connected to Lag BaOmer, where no one actually knows how and why. So many things added, and to create this high holiday, and which is not that high, and I don't know how much it's a holiday. And we will see the sources today to question if Lag BaOmer is a holiday at all. Not saying high holiday, but a holiday. And you will see that the sources are not very clear about it. And so I will dive into a few stories about how this date became a very special, unique date. And you will see that, first of all, I can guarantee for sure that the Talmud and Mishnah have never heard of Lag BaOmer. Okay, they haven't heard about it. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai didn't know he died that day. He wasn't aware that that was a date, and neither was his disciples. Okay, that came also much later. But I want to take you to a rabbit hole. We will start from sources that come outside of what we usually study, and God forbid we will even bring some sources from the church today. Okay, two different sources from Christian priests who said something about this day. So hold tight. I'll share with you the. It will, as I said, it will be very different, but it will be different. So we'll enjoy that for once. Here. So what we can see here. Don't try to read the letters in this. Okay, this is a source. This is not a Christian source. This is a source that comes from a synagogue. It's called the Mosaic of Rehov, Ketovet Rehov. It's from a synagogue from around something around the 6th century, so 500-ish, the end of the Talmud time. And it's written different things. Specifically, the details here are connected to the status of the town of Beit Shean. And don't think about it. I brought it because of one quotation. Within all of this, there came suddenly a list of Tzomot. And this is the text that you can see here. You can see the under my, I don't know if I need to make it bigger somewhere that you can see. This is part of the text. As classical text, you don't have all the words, and not all the words are just as clear. So what you have within these, I don't know how they're called in English, the square puncties, is a speculation of what was written originally. So, but it's probably correct. It fits the rest of the sentence. So I read it together. Alin tzume de kula shata. These are the fasts of the whole year. All the fasts in the year that we have. Nisan, Kaf Zayin Ba. 27th of Nisan. Okay, do you know any fast day on the 27th of Nisan? Actually, today is also a sad date. It's the day of Yom HaShoah, when we mark the Holocaust Day. But that had nothing to do with this. Like these two sources are very, very... So one is 27 and Nisan, and the other one, it says Iyar Yud Chetba, the 18th of Iyar. Now, when is the 18th of Iyar?
Lag BaOmer.
Lag BaOmer. Okay? So we can see here a source. This source doesn't give us too much information. But this is the first source that we know that mentions specifically the date of Lag BaOmer. And this was a fast day. Not a holiday. This was a day of fasting. It doesn't say why, so we don't know anything about what this is. But a bit later, we find a couple of sources that mention this date. And this date actually have a specific name, which you can find in this song that was written by Rabbi Elazar Kalil, with a very, very famous poet. We have different thing that he writes that we use until today in our prayer books, especially for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, like the time that we use many different poems from different times. So he was what we call a paitan, right, who wrote songs to ritual things. And he explains about this date of the 18th of the second month, right? And what is the second month? That's Iyar, because the first month is Nisan, and the second month is Iyar. And he said as follows: B'chol hayachat misfat shani, b'yot binun manhig she'oni. Any one of you recollect what's the name? B'yot binun. You know who binun is?
Yehoshua?
Yes, Yoshua bin Nun. So we have the name of Yoshua bin Nun somewhere away. V'yachmos yemav uvo ishoni b'shmona'asar b'sheni. He says something, it's very, the words are not clear. It's about something terrible that happened while Yoshua bin Nun was a leader in the 18th day in the second month. Okay, so this is the second place we meet. It's 100 years after the first, this quotation from Rehov, where it quotes specifically about this date and something to do with Yoshua bin Nun. None of you mentioned it. We mentioned Rabbi Akiva, we mentioned Rabban Rashbi, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, but you didn't mention Yoshua bin Nun. But here you can see that in Eretz Israel, there was a tradition that something happened in the 18th of the second, and it was a fast that was connected to Yoshua bin Nun. And the best place that we can also see that this actually came to reality was in the Cairo Geniza. Have you ever heard of the Geniza in Cairo?
Yeah.
So this is a story of its own. Very shortly, I will say that in Cairo there was a synagogue of a Ezra Sofer, it was called, and they had Geniza. Geniza is a place where you throw away holy books. But the thing is that this synagogue was so old; it was a 1500 years old synagogue, and they had a room of Geniza where they threw away all their Geniza, all their holy books, and actually they threw away anything that was written in Hebrew. They threw away in that room. So you had a huge room piled with all the things that were written in Hebrew and something else in Arabic that were connected to the holy books in that community for more than 1500 years. They found there letters written by Rambam with his signature, like in his handwriting. They found many different books that we didn't even know existed. They found so many different things. Salmon Schechter was the one who brought the Geniza from Cairo to Cambridge, and he was the greatest scholar who tried to bring out the text from there. But until today, people still make research on the Cairo Geniza. In the Cairo Geniza, there was a scroll with all the special dates that were celebrated in Eretz Israel. And then they have a list of according to the whole year. And then they say, Tzamu beyudchet bo, they fasted in the 18th day of Iyar, biglal mot Yoshua, because of the death of Joshua. Okay, so now we have a yahrzeit of someone, not Rashbi, not Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And I remind you, this was written long after Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai passed away. So it's clear they didn't know anything about Rashbi at that time. But they did have a tradition that they had a fast of Yoshua bin Nun, Tzom Yoshua bin Nun, on the day of Lag BaOmer. They didn't call it Lag BaOmer, they called it Yudchet B'Iyar. So they didn't know that Lag BaOmer is something special. Okay, so we have here a very interesting source that is connected to the 18th of Iyar, tells about the fast day of Yoshua. but they add another sentence. V'haya bo ra'ash. Ra'ash in Hebrew means earthquake in ancient Hebrew. So they add that the 18th they fasted because of that Joshua died, and there was an earthquake. What is that? We don't know from any sources. This is the only source that we have in the Jewish text that in any ways puts like something of an earthquake on the 18th of Iyar. Like we don't know anything about this. It's like a very weird, a bit mysterious text. But interestingly, we have in the Talmud a connection between Yoshua bin Nun and earthquakes. Okay, I told you it's a rabbit hole, right? It had nothing to do with what we know of Lag BaOmer today, where this is all what I'm saying today, no one knows about. Like very few people know these sources and think about them. So in the Talmud, we have in Masechet Shabbat, there's something about eulogizing. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav. Rav Yehuda said that Rav said, anyone who is lazy in eulogizing, right, saying the eulogy after someone who passed away.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyone who is lazy in eulogizing a Torah scholar, so Talmid Chacham, it is fitting to bury him alive. So bad it is. This is another part that I want to focus. As it is stated, and they buried him in the border of his inheritance in Timnat Serach, which is in the hill country of Ephraim, on the north of the mountain of Gaash. What is that? Very weird. They talk now about Yehoshua bin Nun. This is a quotation from the book of Joshua. When he passed away, it says that they buried him in the border of his inheritance in Timnat Serach, which is in the hill country of Ephraim, on the north of the mountain of Gaash. And then what they do, they play like the Talmud likes to. You already learned that the Talmud likes to play with words, right? So they say, why do they have here the word mountain Gaash? Melamed sheragash alehen har lehorgan. This teaches that the mountain raged against them to kill them. Okay, so we have here a mountain that raged, like some kind of an earthquake that is connected to Joshua. Now, why? It looks like there is a tradition that we see here from two places that connects Joshua to earthquakes. Not exactly understanding why they are connected to each other. And now I'm coming to the complicated part. I'm doing now a thing that please don't tell anyone I'm doing this, and don't say that I'm quoting these leaders of the church. But interestingly, we have a description of the events that happened on the 18th of Iyar. And we have them in a few Christian sources. I brought two. I don't know if I need to read all of it. It's a lot. But no, maybe we should. Maybe some. I'll forget some. So the two are people who were leading figures in the church that lived in Israel. Gregory Nazianzen. So this is one, and the other one is Kirill of Jerusalem. Kirill of Jerusalem. None of you heard them, right? not anyone that you're supposed to know. Kyrilius is a quite known scholar in the Roman world, and also Gregory, but it's like in the Catholic Roman Church. Yes. Does anyone want to read the first part? I've spoken too much.
I can read.
Thank you, Paula. Great.
Gregory Nazianzen's second invective against Julian the Emperor.
Have you heard of Julian the Emperor?
The Emperor? No?
Have you heard the name Julian the Emperor?
But there are so many emperors in Rome, and it's impossible. They have but Julian, no, Julius maybe.
Julius. Yeah, but it's not Julius Caesar. Julian the Emperor came right after Constantine. Why is it relevant? Because Constantine was the one who turned Rome to Christianity. Julian comes right after him and wants to change it back. Okay, so it's very interesting that like the fight within Rome against Christianity, and very interesting here. Okay, and now what he did.
Okay, at last he steered 88 up against
no,
us.
88 is just
Oh.
yeah.
At last he stirred up against us the nation of the Jews, making his accomplice in his machinations their well-known credulity, as well as that hatred for us which has smoldered in them from the very beginning, prophesying to them out of their own books and mysteries that now was the appointed time come for them to return into their own land, and to rebuild the temple and restore the reign of their hereditary institution, thus hiding his true purpose under the mark of benevolence.
Okay, you understood what did he write here? When he says against us, it's against us Christians. Okay, he steered against us the nation of the Jews. Okay, in this time, the Christians are not anymore a Jewish group. It became already a separate religion. It was until in the first 150 years, Christianity was a Jewish sect. But in this point, it's already a completely different religion. They don't see themselves as Jews. They're Israel Baruch. They have different connection, but they're not Jewish. And how does he take the Jews against them? He convincing the Jews to return to their land and rebuild the temple. Have you ever heard of that? Like he tried to make the Jews rebuild the temple. Amazing, right? Wonderful. The Jews and the Romans, hand in hand, goes against the Christians, and the Jews go back to the Holy Land. Now, what happened?
And when he had formed this plan and made them believe it, for whatever suits one wishes is really engine for deceiving people, they began to debate about rebuilding the temple. And in large number and with great zeal, set about the work. For the partisans of the other side report that not only did their women strip off all their personal ornaments and contribute it towards the work and operations, but even carried away the rubbish in the laps of their gowns, sparing neither the so precious clothes nor yet the tenderness of their own limbs, for they believed they were doing a pious action and regarded everything of less moment than the work in hand. But they being driving against one another as though by a furious blast of wind and sudden heaving of the earth, some rush to one another, as though by the furious blast of wind and sudden heaving of the
heaving of the earth. So it's like the earth rose, which is an earthquake.
Yeah, some rushed to one of the neighboring sacred places to pray for mercy, Others, as is wont to happen in such cases, made use of what came to hand to shelter themselves. Others were carried away blindly by the panic and struck against those who were running up to see what was the matter. There are some who say that neither did the sacred place admit them, but that when they approached the folding doors that stood wide open, on coming up to them, they found them closed in their faces by an unseen and invisible power which works wonders of the sort for the confusion of the...
Okay, maybe we don't need to continue the whole thing. You understood the main thing, right? He describes here an amazing situation. All the Jews were thrilled about rebuilding the temple. They brought their jewelry. They gave what they could to build this. And they came to Jerusalem, started working, starting building, and then came a huge wind, an earthquake, and a different problem, a fire that came out of the house. And I didn't bring the last part. I thought was maybe the exaggeration, because he finishes saying that, and the most amazing thing was that there was a cross of fire in the heaven. So I maybe that was, but anyways, he describes you an event that was regardless, like this is not something he came up with. It's very clearly that this has some historic background, and the amazing thing is that we have the date of this, when did this happen? In the late of the Quirinius of Jerusalem, you have more or less the same description of what happened. He writes, at first, when they wanted to lay the foundation of the temple on Sunday before the earthquake, there were strong winds and storms, right? Just like he wrote in the beginning, also the wind. And as a result, they were unable to lay the foundation of the temple on that day. That very night, the great quake occurred. Harash HaGadol, the great quake, the earthquake. And we were all in the church of the confessors, immersed in prayer. After that, we all went out to the Mount of Olives, which stands to the east of Jerusalem, from where our Lord was taken up. That's, of course, the Christian story. And they, wishing to imitate us, ran to the usual gathering place of the synagogue and found the synagogue doors closed. They were greatly astonished by what had happened and stood around in silence and fear, when suddenly the doors of the synagogue opened by themselves, and from the building came forth of fire that consumed most of them, and most collapsed and died in front of the building. And why is that important? Because the event occurred on Monday. So we're talking about Sunday, Monday that year, at the 3rd hour, and part of it at the 9th hour of the night. There was a tremendous loss of life. This was on the 19th of Iyar, in the year 674 of the kingdom of Alexander the Great. 674, you can make you can calculate. It's around the year 300. We know the date of Julian the Emperor. So it's the time of the Julian the Emperor. Okay, so we have an earthquake that it says here the 19th, but we actually know from two different sources. He starts the description from Sunday, which is the day before, which is the 18th of Iyar, and they actually found tombs where there were dates of people who died in an earthquake in that year on the 18th of Iyar. They were found in close to Yam HaMelach, tombs of people who died in an earthquake on 18th of Iyar that year. So we know for sure the date of this event from sources outside of the Jewish tradition. Why this so amazing? Because seeing this, we can probably understand why there was a fast on the 18th of Iyar. Think of the trauma. We talk here about 250 years after the destruction of the temple. Jews of the world suddenly have the leader of the world, the emperor of the Roman Empire, supporting them on going back to Israel and to rebuild the temple. Now, he had, of course, his own interest. Why did he want to do it? He wanted to do it against the Christianity, because Christianity was built on God forsaking the Jews and choosing the new Israel. And God forsaking the Jews included destroying our temple. That's why you have all these symbols of the forsaking Israel, the blind Israel who don't see the truth, and the very strong church. I don't know if you know the state of synagogue, the blind Jewish woman, and the Roman who was with a crown, woman who's like the new Israel. So what will be the best way to ruin Christianity? If Judaism is strong again, if Jews rebuild the temple, then it means that God did not forsake them, right? This is the change of the course of history. So all the story of the Christians, all their theology disappears very easily if the Jews recreate their own country and have their temple. That's it. You don't need anything else to ruin Christianity completely. Think how amazing it was for the church that in that very, very day, when they start to rebuild the temple, comes an earthquake. So the goal was the very opposite. They wanted to destroy Christianity, and instead, it was here. God himself intervenes to prevent the Jews from rebuilding the temple. This turned to the greatest trauma of the Jews. They had hopes of Mashiach, and these hopes collapsed completely. Think of this trauma that occurred to all of them, especially those who lived in Israel and came. And there's actually a story that the leader among them, his name was Yehoshua. So that might be the connection, how they came to connect this story to Yoshua bin Nun, because one of the leaders that it's written in another place that his name was Yoshua, one of the two, the Yoshua and Zerubbabel. So maybe this is the connection, how Joshua came into the picture and Yoshua turned to Yoshua bin Nun and so on. We don't know. But this is the original day that is not a day of celebration. I say not high holiday, the vice versa. This was a trauma that happened and not a celebration. Now, all this I told you now, there are not many people knows about it. But until that time, no one have ever heard of Lag BaOmer. Okay, so the name Lag BaOmer was never used. The term didn't exist. But at some point, this story, I don't know if it's a story or a tradition, like there was a knowledge about a day, a special date that continued, and then got a different story to go into this date. We don't know exactly how that happened, but at some point, something happened and connected that. And where did that happen? This goes back, and I will take the source from the Midrash, the source for today. I promise I will also study a Midrash today, because this is our topic. So we will study a Midrash. And this is a Midrash of the students of Rabbi Akiva. The part that all of us know that is connected to the fact that we can't get married in Lag BaOmer, the fact that I have a long beard and I haven't shaved since before Pesach and until tomorrow evening. Only tomorrow evening I will be allowed to to shave my beard or to make it nicer, or just get a cut. We don't do that before Lag BaOmer. What is the source for that? Is again, in a quite weird way, originally in the sources we have, there's nothing to do with Lag BaOmer. But it turned to be that, and I'll explain how it happened. But I do want to go to the source because the source is important, and that is the story of Rabbi Akiva. So I'll share again the page, and we will go down to Bereshit Rabbah. And again, I'll need help to reading. Someone else?
Yeah.
Thank you, Pauline. Yes.
In the morning, sow your seed, and in the evening, do not rest your hand. Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua.
This is from Kohelet, right? The Megillat Kohelet that we read on Sukkot. This is a sentence. So they're going to talk about this idea of in the morning sow your seed, and in the evening do not rest your hand. It's about how much we need to work all the time.
Perfect. Rabbi Eliezer said, if you sowed in the early season, sow in the late season as well, as you do not know which will succeed. Whether that of the early season or that of the late season, or whether they both alike will be good. Rabbi Yeshua said...
Okay, so let's start with this one.
Yes.
You want to explain?
No, I just had this like blasted. It makes sense.
Okay, he says something very simple.
Both sides.
He says, you should never stop trying because you never know what will succeed, right? So you don't know if there'll come a storm or whatever. Then you have to continue. You can't just relax after. Now I did my investment, so that's it. Now I can relax. And no, you have to continue working because you don't know what will happen with this. What kind of a what we call it, Babul Shahor, a black swan can come and ruin everything. Like you don't know, so it's best always to sow. And this season, the next season, you continue because you never know what's going to happen. Never wait relaxed with everything ready. You should continue work. Yes, that's the first one. Then Rabbi Yeshua said.
I have a question. Can you, as a metaphor, understand it as like, even if you succeed, you should like pursue in your life, but also like to have both plan A and B and C, because you never know what will happen.
Yes. Yeah, even if you manage it, and this is part of the example that maybe will come later. But yes, but you never stop. That's the thing. You never stop and say, well, now I came to the right place, and that's it. You have to continue the work. I can see it many times. For example, I will be a bit critical, also a bit critical in my profession. Many times you can see professors and rabbis re-give their shiurim that they gave 10, 20, 30 years ago. At some point, they had enough of research and said, okay, now I have enough knowledge and I can reuse all the material that I already used in the past. It happened a lot in the in academia. It happened a lot also to rabbis. I am sure that it might happen to me too. So this is why I brought this Midrash, to prepare myself not to do that, because you have to continue with the chidush, with something new for new, and so on. I can tell you that I'm very inspired by my father and Rav Meir Rubinstein. When they give the shiurim, they continue all the time, try to find something new whenever they study, all the time. Maybe it's sometimes hard to follow on the line, how do they think, but they continue, try to find something new every time. In Beit Midrash below chidush, there's no real Beit Midrash without renewal. So renewal is essential, and that is very critical, that you continue renew yourself in the studies and so on. Yes.
Rabbi Yeshua. Yeah, Rabbi Yeshua said, if a poor person comes to you in the morning, give him charity, and if another comes in the evening, give him as well. As you don't know for which of them the Holy One, blessed be he, will record about you for this one or for that one, or whatever they both alike will be good.
Yeah. So give both of them. Two people need charity. Don't say, okay, I already donated in the morning, so I don't need to donate again. In Israel, you have a saying, because you have these, um, there are days that students come and ask for money to charity for huge organizations. And then there's a saying that when they come to you in the street, you say, no, כבר תרמתי בבית. I already donated at home, so I don't need to donate again. And it became a catchphrase. You still use it. Like, no, תרמתי בבית. I've already donated. So he says, no. Give in the morning and give in the evening too. This is never start, because you don't know which one of them will thank God for what you gave him, and will give you some fortune about it. So it's a good investment to donate to all of them. Yes, let's continue. I promise I will come to Lag Bomer, I promise.
Rabbi Ishmael and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Ishmael says, if you study Torah in your youth, study Torah in your old age, as you do not know which of them will endure, this one or that one, or whether they both alike will be good.
Yes, this is what I said before, that you have to continue to study Torah. It's not enough the Torah you studied at youth, you have to continue to study Torah also as older.
Rabbi Akiva says, if you had students in your youth, procure students for yourself in your old age, as you do not know which of them will endure, this one or that one, or whether they both alike will be good.
Okay, so he comes here, Rabbi Akiva, with a message. If you have students, you should also have new students. You have to continue having new students, and which is very interesting. We have different stories about Rabbi Akiva and students. I don't know if any of you heard the story of how Rabbi Akiva goes back and his wife, how he studied Torah, and like the whole story about Rabbi Akiva and his students. I won't go into it, but there's one story of Rabbi Akiva and the students that explains why he said this. So that now this is a quotation from him. Suddenly the Bereshit Rabbah comes here and give context to his saying, okay? So this is not his saying stopped here, but Bereshit Rabbah gives us a context to his saying and explains, yeah? Paulina?
Rabbi Akiva had 12,000 students from Akko to Antipatis, and they all died in one time period. Why? Because they were miserly toward each other. Ultimately, he produced 7
disciples.
Yeah. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yosei, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua, Rabbi Yohanan Hassandler, and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov.
Okay, we don't have to, some say it's like different names.
Yes.
He said to them,
my sons, the previous students died only because they were miserly toward one another. See to it that you do not act in accordance with their actions. They arose and filled the entire land of Israel with Torah knowledge.
Okay, quite amazingly, he tells about 12,000 disciples of Rabbi Akiva who died at once. So this is a context that Bereshit Rabbah gives to what Rabbi Akiva just said. It's not enough producing students when you're young, you should continue also when you're old. And he tells here, the context is that the first students of Rabbi Akiva, they all died. Historically, what many people did, and especially in the Zionist movement, they connected this story to the Merd Bar Kochva. Have you heard of Bar Kochva? Okay. Okay, that's a whole, we go back to history lesson, but that's a different history lesson. 70 years after the destruction of the temple, there was a new revolt in Israel, in Yehuda, in Judea, and the leader was Bar Kokhba.
Okay.
Bar Kokhba, or Bar Kuziva, as he was mentioned. And he was a secular, he was a like religious, but he was like the secular leader of the revolt, and he got the support of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, when he saw Bar Kokhba, his name was Shimon Bar Kuziva, and he said, Darach Kochav mi Yaakov. This is the Kochav, the star from Jacob, that is the prophecies talked about, the Mashiach, the Messiah that will help Jews revive. I go back to the beginning when I talked about how rebuilding the temple. So there was a revolt, and there were 3 years of independence. Historically, archaeologically, you can find the tefillin, you can find coins that they made at this time. This revolt was a success for a short time, but then the Romans came and crushed it completely and killed many thousands of Jews, and this was actually the end of living in Judea. This is a revolt of Bar Kokhba. So many people connect these 1,000 to 12,000 disciples of Rabbi Akiva to those who were active in the revolt of Bar Kokhba. The rabbis were very much against this revolt, except by Rabbi Akiva, who was a supporter of it, and that's why it became the other rabbis called Bar Kokhba Bar Kuziva. Kuziva is kazav, is a lie. So he was the lying leader, not the star, but the lie. So there's lots of discussions about him. The Zionist movement loved Bar Kokhba and brought him back from after many years that Jewish tradition didn't like him and ignored him and criticized him. The Zionist movement really liked the fact that he took the power to his own hands and revolted. And that's why he became a hero again. And that's also why the tradition of lighting the medurot started, connected to different things, but this is how the Zionist movement took it to themselves. But you can see here in our source that Rabbi Akiva talks about the beginning and how it didn't succeed. Why? Because they were miserly towards one another. So there was something about how they behaved to one another. And then came a long line of rabbis who are the greatest rabbis of that time. All these rabbis are those who continued the Torah. So he made new rabbis in his older age, after, and these are the ones who continued Judaism later on. Rabbi Akiva himself was killed in the revolt. Rabbi Akiva, and we have Esar Ugei Malchut, and we read about them in the prayers in Yom Kippur, about all these rabbis who were killed during the revolt and in those years. And he says how crucial it is to also continuously renew yourself. Now, when did they die? It says, okay, down here. Okay, so it says that all died at once in one period. In the Talmud, I forgot to bring it here. It said that the time where they died was between Pesach and Atzeret. The period when they died was between Pesach and Atzeret. When is Atzeret? Atzeret is Shavuot. Okay, so again, nothing to do with Lag BaOmer. We have a period of of them dying, and Lag BaOmer is in this period, but no one mentioned it as a connection. Later on, we have I didn't bring all the sources. We have Natronai Gaon, one of the Geonim, the period of the rabbis after the Talmud, the Geonim, who were the leaders of the yeshiva and the leaders of the Jewish people. And they wrote lots of shelot v'tshuvot, responsa. Like they got question and they answered. And there, one of these rabbis, Rabbi Natronai Gaon, got a question from a Jew in Tunisian. Okay, so North Africa, Rabbi Natronai Gaon is in Babylon, in Iraq, and he got a question asking about the tradition we have of not getting married between Pesach and Shavuot. Okay, so between Pesach and Atzeret, the same dates. And then Rabbi Natronai Gaon says, what is the reason? Why do we do that? Because of the students of Rabbi Akiva who died in this period. This is why we have these mourning expressions during this period. It's a minhag, it's a tradition, it's not a halacha, it's only a custom, but it's not a halacha, it's not a rule, but this is the tradition. So he connects a local tradition that no one explains, no one knows where it started, of not marrying, to Rabbi Akiva. This is the first time it says so, and this is in the 900. Okay, so long after the Talmud. Later on, we go up now from Tunis to Spain and to France. And in southern France, there's an Ashkenazi rabbi who writes a similar, there's a rabbi in Spain, Rabbi Zrachi Alevi, that writes that is connected to at pros Atzeret. Instead of saying from Pesach to Atzeret, he says from Pesach and up to Atzeret. Pros Atzeret, like up to Atzeret, up to Shavuot. But then the Ashkenazi rabbi in France writes the same very thing, but writes that they died until Lag BaOmer. So we have a different place. In Spain, he wrote Yudchet Iyar in the earlier, and the first one to use Lag BaOmer is the Ashkenazi rabbi in the years around like 1100s, more or less. So long after, and suddenly connecting Atzeret is turning to Pros Atzeret, so earlier. And Yudchet Iyar is Lag BaOmer, and he mentioned that he makes a connection to Lag BaOmer. What obviously happened was in some way Lag BaOmer was something people knew about, like this date, Yudchet Iyar and Lag BaOmer, which is the same date, was known as a day that is a day that you should commemorate. And he makes this connection to the students of Rabbi Akiva. That's how Rabbi Akiva comes into play. And later on, different things that happen in Miron, very fishy how Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai came into this. Like lots of speculation. It's much later, at least 400 or 500 years later than this. So the tradition that connects Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai to Lag BaOmer starts more than 1,000 years after Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai dies. Okay, so but this is today the greatest event of the Jewish event in the world. It's quite amazing. Lag BaOmer in Meron, in terms of size, is the biggest Jewish event in the world. You have almost 500,000 people, Jews, coming to Har Meron to celebrate that day. That's also why we had the tragedy a few years ago, where more than 30 died in the events because of the place is not built for so many people, and it was a huge tragedy, and not only a tragedy but also many people, including our current the Israeli current prime minister, was seen as responsible. But responsible doesn't mean anything in Israeli politics. So even though he was declared responsible for that, that was it. He was declared responsible. That's it. And there was an investigation. There was a committee investigating the events and point fingered on ministers and the prime minister that knew that it was a challenge and didn't do what they were supposed to do to prevent it. They were warned that this is dangerous and they didn't do anything. But that's a side thing. I want to go back to what so Lag BaOmer turned to be the greatest, the most mystical event. I think that we learned today that it is also connected. You can see how a holiday can be created. Like there's something happened once and changes and evolve into something completely different where you don't know the source. You have a date, you have a story, you connect the date to the story, and in a mysterious way it gets a new face and a new story and a new content. This is also why, like, I think after learning everything we did today, it's also understandable why Lag BaOmer is not an important holiday. Like there's nothing religiously, almost nothing. Like the only thing is that we have the tradition that on Lag BaOmer we're allowed finally to get married. That's the big thing in the Ashkenazi tradition. There are different traditions that people from Lag BaOmer until Shavuot, people all the way to Shavuot, some only until Lag BaOmer. But this is the technical thing. But other than that, it's not a celebration. It's not a holiday that has real content that comes from Mishnah and Talmud time. It comes much later. And but we also saw, I think, something very beautiful and hard about dreams that collapse. Like this is something we can all relate to. And maybe this year for Lag BaOmer, we can think of that aspect of the ancient day that existed, Tzom Yoshua, that probably were there to remember the Jews trying to rebuild the temple and fail, and how their dream collapsed. And maybe it can be a memorial day of collapsing dreams, that we all have some, and I think that we can think about them and their meaning, and maybe from Lag BaOmer also learn how these days can turn from tragedies to something that is today the greatest Jewish celebration of the year, of the whole Jewish world. So things can turn to the good, and also from very bad situations in a mysterious way. How? That I don't know. That will be left for you. Good. So I said it was a very different shiur. Lots of information today and less study. I hope you studied learned some new things that you haven't heard of before. I'm quite sure you did. And you also, I can tell you now that you bear knowledge that very few Jews around you know. Probably none. So you can tell them there's something new you learned today. Yes, Paulina.
Can I still have a question?
Of course.
So I'm very curious about the name Lag BaOmer, because first of all, when you write it in Hebrew, it has the foreign letters in the first how's it called? First or, and then the second one is LaOmer, not BaOmer. When you write it down, do you understand what I mean?
Lag BaOmer, yeah, but that BaOmer, LaOmer is the same.
Okay.
Like there's no real difference. Lag It's just the letters. It was a time, there was a period that you moved from letters to numbers. Remember that the number that we use today, the Arabic number, is quite new, right? You use Latin numbers, and so classic Jewish numbering was letters. You did say in the when you say the Omer, you say numbers. Yes, but writing, you didn't write numbers. You wrote letters as numbers in a very long period.
Yeah.
As I showed you today, that it says Yudchet Be'iyar, right? The letters, that the number of the date already in the Ktovet Rehov, right? The scriptures, the mosaic that I showed you from Rehov that is 1,500 years old, it said Yudchet Be'iyar. It said the letters as numbers. They probably said Shmonesre. Maybe they didn't say Yudchet. So Lamed is 30, Gimel is 3. That's how you write 33.
Okay, I get it. Thank you. No, I understand.
Yeah. So that's yeah.
Next. I also have a book with it's really interesting. I have it in Polish actually, but it was written in English to begin with, and it's called The Book of Letters. And it has the explanation of each Hebrew letter and what it means.
The numeric number.
Yeah. How the Hebrew letters and numbers work.
But that's not how we use, right? In our calendar, we don't write 5,000. Like if you say in Israel to someone that the Jewish year today is 5,778, they will look at you and say, "What are you talking about?" Because they all use 75. They all use hatashpa, like they use the Hebrew letters number. No one uses the year in numbers. They use the letters.
Thank you. It's really important to know.
Yes. So don't come to Israelis and tell them, this year is 5,000. They would just look at you. What? Good. So I have a great Lag BaOmer. I can tell you that the reason that no one celebrated Lag BaOmer in Denmark until a few years ago, and also in the most of the world. The only thing that they celebrated Lag BaOmer was that they were able to do chatunot, but they didn't think that it's Lag BaOmer. It was a day that you were allowed to marry, and you didn't say Tachanun in the synagogue. That was a celebration. But then Chabad came all over the world, and Chabad said, "Oh, great, we have an opportunity because this is a time that no community have events, so we will do events." So Lag BaOmer is today around the world very much connected to Chabad because they use, we have an empty spot in the Jewish calendar, we can make it to something. Let's
barbecue.
Make it to something big.
They always make barbecue.
They use every opportunity to make So. But that's why Lag BaOmer started to exist in diaspora, because it didn't exist in diaspora. No one celebrated Lag BaOmer at all in diaspora, only in Israel. And in Israel, it was connected to the Zionist movement. It was completely against the Haredi movement. The ultra-Orthodox, because of that, turned it only to be about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Because they didn't like the connection to Bar Kochva and to the revolt and all and fighting, so they turned it only to be about Rashbi and his passing, the Zohar and all the mystical Judaism. This is what the ultra-Orthodox did as a reaction to the Zionist. They had it already before in Meron, but it was small, tiny. No one really celebrated around the world. But then they created. It became much bigger as an alternative to the Zionist youth movements and all of that in Israel. And in the world, through the Chabad took that to the world because no one else celebrated. There was nothing here before. 30 years ago, no one knew that there is such a thing like BaOmer in diaspora. Yes, Esther?
What is the meaning of bonfires during Lag BaOmer? Why they are?
There's no meaning.
No meaning.
It started from Meron. There are two
Mhm.
connections, two stories. One is in Meron that in Meron they light always a big just like you do with candles to someone who passed away. So there was a tradition about lighting the great candle, which is like instead of a candle they did a bonfire in Meron in front of everyone as part of the Hilulah to remembrance of the past, the dead, the day of the passing, the outside of Rashbi.
Okay.
And
All
there
right.
was a specific Hasidic movement who bought the right to light that menorah, and they do it until today. The Rebbe of Sadigura, no, the Rebbe of Boyan, I think it is, that always lights the first menorah in Meron. And then in the Zionist movement, they connected it to the revolt, saying that they used these bonfires to signal to each other. So this is what the Zionist connection, but very new, modern. It became a thing. Interestingly, we have in very similar time in Europe also a celebration with bonfires, right? That we have closely to this also Sankt Hans.
Yeah, so
it's also connected to bonfires. So here may be also a connection from non-Jewish sources to bonfires.
But this Sankt is not related to this Molech?
Maybe. You can explain it as much as you can. But that's a different story. Connection between Jews and Jewish holidays that are affected by non-Jewish holidays. That's a whole new theme that we can open. Why do we really eat sufganiyot for Hanukkah and many other rules that we can discuss and understand what exactly is where did it really come from? I can finish with that story maybe that we have many different special melodies in the synagogue in Copenhagen that are like traditional here. And there was once a guy who came in and knew and could sing songs to the same melodies, but they were the songs that were sang in pubs, which makes it curious to know what is the source of this melody. Where did it really come from, and how did it find its way into the synagogue? But maybe it was the vice versa. It started from synagogue and went to the pub. I don't know. Good, but thank you for today, and happy Lag BaOmer, and look forward to see whoever of you will be joining us for the seminar next weekend. We look forward to that. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very nice.